So, most of us were never taught how to deal with conflict, not at home, not at work, definitely not at work, and not at school. But what do we do when things keep bubbling under the surface? When you're biting your tongue, carrying stress, or dreading that one person on the team who just grinds your gears? But what if conflict could create deeper relationships, better leadership, and more connected teams? So, whether you're working from the shop floor or sitting in the boardroom, tension shows up. And how we deal with it can either build trust or quietly break it. This is Healthy Conflict, the podcast where we're treating conflict like a problem to avoid, where we stop treating conflict like a problem to avoid and start treating it like an opportunity for greater success. Because the best leaders, the ones people actually want to be with, aren't the ones who shut conflict down. They're the ones who get good at tough conversations. This isn't just about a better communicator, it's about building cultures where people want to stay, grow, and give their best. So I'm Rasha Shaheen. I help visionary leaders step out of daily firefighting into their zone of genius by designing cultures that thrive without them.
I'm Rainey Martin, and I help entrepreneurs, leaders, and teams improve their bottom line by building workplaces that people love and customers never forget. I can be found at coachrainey.com. Great to be here with you this morning, Rasha.
Yeah, amazing to be back with you, Rainey. And today we're talking about healthy conflict, and the point that we want to discuss today is that why do we snap, and what can we do about it?
Right, exactly. Exactly. And maybe looking at snapping in a new way, right? Like um we think about snapping as like everybody snaps or don't be reactive, make sure to think before you speak. um but maybe snapping isn't just like a human moment, but also a leadership checkpoint, right? Like when you see yourself getting to that snapping place, or you're already at that snapping place. A lot of times we don't see the buildup, right? We're just there. All of a sudden something comes out of our mouth, and we didn't it's not intentional at all, right?
Yeah,
So that moment being kind of a window into what triggers you and what are your deepest drivers,
yeah.
right? It's not just looking at snapping or your response to snapping as a way to self-regulate for wellness, for being in a healthier place, showing up the way you want, but also it's self-regulation as a core leadership skill, right? When you snap and you recognize that you're snapping because of maybe pride or ego, or that even that that it's triggering childhood issues, whatever it is. When you reflect on your snapping, that's a leadership opportunity, right?
I mean, what I'm hearing you say here is that there's an element of like, okay, you've snapped, and there's an element of forgiving yourself. It's no big deal. There's an element of showing your vulnerability, and actually, that is great leadership. And you just use that moment to kind of recognize, okay, I've snapped. This isn't. This is a moment to reflect and a moment to decide the next step. But
Right.
you've already touched on kind of self-regulation here, and how that can be like a reset when you do snap. Do you want to unpack that a little bit?
Yeah, yeah. And actually I also just kind of wanted um to just put a note on what you were saying, just, and we won't talk about this too much now because this is a later episode, but um I I do want to kind of mention that when you give yourself permission sort of to snap, right? Or maybe not, that's a little more extreme than we're saying, but when you um when you don't put so much energy into the fact that you snapped, the key there, right, is repair, right? If
Mm,
it's, yes, we're all human, we're all gonna snap, maybe, until we come from a more self-regulated place. But the way um, to use that moment effectively is to make sure that you're repairing. So you're modeling great behavior. You're modeling the kind of culture you want to see. You're modeling that you are human and it's okay to make mistakes. There's so much richness in it, right? But
Yeah.
anyway, that's not where we are today. But just wanted to make that note. So anyway, you you said, do I want to unpack
Yeah.
which part? Yeah.
The regulation part, like so let's say, okay, we snapped, like, okay, obviously there's a reason why we snapped. It got to a certain point. And we haven't talked on the kind of like the why we snap yet. I think we should definitely do that. And there's a moment, of like the reason why we snap is kind of like, in a way, it's like it's a grabbing for power, isn't it?
Yes. Right. Right. So often when we snap in response to whatever, it is about pride, right? It's about our ego is has been attacked,
Yeah.
and 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 it's this reflexive, I have to regain the control in this situation, right?
Yeah. And
Yeah.
obviously you're trying to gain control, but what you're doing is you're deteriorating trust. So we're definitely not saying that snapping is a solution, but there's, getting to know yourself and getting to understand why you snap. And that is the first step. But again, you'd already touched on the self-regulation, you know and
Hmm.
the snap reset. And we've talked about kind of, okay, you've snapped, you're getting to know yourself, like, you're recognizing why you're snapped. Then you kind of, okay, you don't put so much energy into the snap, like you forgive yourself. And that moment of choice, into forgiving yourself, okay, but the next step, how do you rebuild trust? How do you make that next step? How do you do the snap reset? What is that?
Yeah, 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 exactly, exactly. And let's even just talk for a minute about, like, why is that important, right?
Yeah.
Because every moment that where that a leader has the opportunity to model the behavior that they want to see in their culture is a moment of powerful opportunity, right? Um, so uh, yes, but back to what you're saying, what is that three-step process um, of self-regulation, right? So first of all, like we said, notice what's triggering you. Notice the charge, right? And maybe not even what's triggering you, but that you're being triggered. Notice that you're being triggered, and that kind of harkens back to our favorite, one of our favorite modalities, right? PQ, right? Recognize your saboteur. Notice that there's a saboteur at work here. And anytime you're feeling agitated, we know that's a saboteur anyway, right? So even just the feeling of agitation or trigger is a an alert for you. So step one, notice the charge. Step two, name what's underneath. So, like in PQ, we'd name the saboteur if we can, right? It, aside from PQ, name what you feel like is being attacked, right? Is it your pride? Is it some childhood pattern that you've developed? Who knows? There's a host of reasons that we feel defensive or attacked, right? And then step three, ideally, right? Regulate before you respond. Can you wait? Can you create that space between stimulus and response and take that moment? You know, this is interesting. This last week I was at this Rich Litvin conference, and one of the things, the tools he used that I already have incorporated into my work with my clients is a snow globe. He took a snow globe and shook it, right? And he said, what happens when you get triggered? And it was an absolute visual representation of what happens inside us, right? And when I did it with my own clients, their response in both groups was, you feel all swirly inside, right? The snow globe is such a good physical representation of what happens. You feel all swirly. There's all these feelings and an angst and intensity inside your body, right? But what happens when you wait a beat? It can all settle down, and you can have, and then that just taking the time gives you can give you the moments that you need to get a hold of yourself, right? To regulate before you actually respond.
I love that. Yeah. So yeah, I love what you said in that moment. Obviously, we want it before the snap, but if you've done the snap, you can still do the same thing. You can kind of be aware, recognize, name the feeling that has just happened, why you snap, name that, and then regulate, take a breath, allow your feelings to kind of that swirl, that snow globe to just settle a bit before you decide the next step and kind of make your decisions in that space of clarity and calmness.
Right. The best leaders aren't the ones who never snap, right? They're the ones who notice the edge and choose differently.
Beautiful.
And that could be before or after.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. I appreciate you're making that distinction.
Yeah. Great. And there's a few drivers of snapping. There's stress.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You're overwhelmed. There's pride, which you've already mentioned, like ego, identity threat, and
Yep. Yep.
that fear of failure.
Yes. Yes. The fear of failure.
Yeah.
Yes.
And it's
Yeah,
all
that's a
linked
big
to kind
one.
of control, isn't it? Fear of failure. There's an element of control there, so you don't want to fail. When you're working with teams and like micromanaging kind of creates pressure, doesn't it? Not just for yourself, but for everyone else. And
Yep. Absolutely.
yeah, and pride as well, that can get in the way because you're not allowing other people to solve the problems. Like in a way you might be feeling that you need to solve all the problems. And as a leader, that's one of the things that we keep forgetting, that we don't have to solve everything. We can allow other people to rise up, and they get to solve, and they, so there's an element of trust, an element of letting go there to allow a culture to thrive.
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting. Like, I find that over and over again with the founders, or even just CEOs, even leaders that aren't don't have the attachment that founders have, struggling so much with letting go of having to be involved in every little thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And even just so not even being aware that they're doing it. And then even when they become aware of it, still struggling so much with being able to let go. And yeah, I mean, I think we've talked about a lot of reasons why that can happen. Um, and I think, for founders especially, um, there's all this stuff wrapped up in being successful or being good at what you're doing, right? There's a high sensitivity to humiliation, shame, inadequacy, and not
Yeah.
just founders, leader, any kind of leader, right? Most Very often leaders are sort of on the lookout for feeling inadequate. And so when something happens that triggers that feeling of inadequacy, so often the reaction is to snap.
I just
It's
want
a
to pause you there because you said something
Yeah,
that was very powerful. They're on the lookout for that feeling of inadequacy. And like most people wouldn't recognize that they're on the lookout for that.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
But because it's that inner worry, it is the driver behind decision making.
It can be. It can be. Yeah, and not just decision making, but behavior. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. I think this is a it's just a sort of a key element of that can be a key characteristic of
yeah.
leaders.
I
Yeah.
guess I
Yeah.
guess like one little mid takeaway that I'm getting from this conversation is that like actually exceptional leaders are ones that kind of do that inner work and get to recognize where their drivers are, their behavioral drivers, their decision drivers, you know, and and um and train themselves to catch their thinking and their thoughts and take and you mentioned that reset, that breath, just to kind of allow, get a little bit of time for that snow globe to settle, to make better decisions. Because the
Yeah.
real cost, just to go back, the cost of not doing that, the cost of snapping, snapping is just one, you know um, way that can show up, but the cost of it is there's long-term damage, there's trust erosion, silence, just lack of innovation.
Absolutely. And also again, I know I keep repeating this, but it when every micro moment, right? Every interaction that a leader has is an opportunity to demonstrate the behaviors they want to see, right? And so when a
Mhm.
leader snaps, it gives permission for people to snap in a culture, right? It creates a culture where snapping is acceptable.
Yeah.
What's that? What you tolerate, you condone, right?
Mhm.
Um, so so part of it is just being really conscious
Mhm.
of your behavior. It's a lot of pressure too. I mean, I think it's important, even though even though the reality is that this is the truth. Like every interaction a leader has models behavior, right? But even that puts a tremendous amount of pressure on leaders. And part of what we want to try to do here is takes open the top of the teapot a little, right? Take off some of the pressure. So it's really just about awareness, right?
Yeah.
Just introducing awareness. And the other thing I think is when we talk about inadequacy, and and inadequacy is just one of those triggers, right? When we talk about deep triggers, the snow globe is a great representation, but the reality can be that it takes a lot of work to 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 develop the kind of self-regulation we're talking about, right?
Yeah.
So I don't want to again introduce the a standard to which leaders are going to be held to and then found wanting again, right? So this is a work, this is a practice, possibly a lifetime practice of getting better at responding, getting
Mm.
better at self-regulation, taking time, again, creating space between stimulus and response.
Yeah. And the impact is huge. Like just making that connection to, yes, the impact is on culture, the impact is on productivity, and the impact is on the business as a whole.
Absolutely, absolutely, because at the end of the day, the performance is based on how people feel at work, right? And performance is what impacts the bottom line. So yes, at the end of the day, we're talking here about improving revenue, improving profit, improving what we define as success for business.
And what I love about this, the implications of this is that, like, because when we take out toxic product, toxic cultures out of the business equation to allow for a better business, then business ends up being just a really, I'm hoping a joyous place to be, when everyone's thriving.
Yeah, ideally, yeah. That's exactly. I don't know about you. I know you work with groups also, and particularly using PQ. And I'm working with a few different groups right now, and that is what I talk about. That's the key focus is how can we come to our work from a place of joy
Yeah.
rather than a place of driving ourselves from in a negative way, right? Letting our judge and our other saboteurs drive our behaviors and drive us into productivity. Instead, how do we come from that peaceful, calm place, that sage place, and drive ourselves from joy, from wholeness?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love it.
Mm. What would our workplaces look like if that's what we were doing here on Earth, right? What would our relationships look like?
Well, the impact would be huge, wouldn't it? Because, like,
Mhm.
the workplaces, imagine coming home from a good day at work, and like you're not taking all that day stress into your work, into your home life.
Wow, right, right. And then how does, that radiate out into your home, into your neighborhood, into your community? What do
Yeah,
you end up doing on your off time when you're feeling good on your work time?
yeah,
Yeah, yeah. And all just from thinking about what triggers you to snap.
yeah. But you said it. The crux of it is self awareness, and that's kind of linked to emotional intelligence, isn't it? And like that's a kind of a practice.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's a practice. And
Yeah,
it's just like, this is something that one of the team members in my group that I met with yesterday talked about. I thought it was really fantastic. It's just like building muscle, right? So you don't go to the gym one day and then expect your muscle to be strong and for you to be able to lift anything you want, right? You got to go to the gym every day or you don't have to go to the gym necessarily. You have to lift weights every day to build that muscle, and it takes time to build the muscle. And if you stop for a few days, you go backwards, right? So we need to think about the our own self-regulation, our emotional awareness as a muscle.
and I want to go back to the first thing that we said, this idea of like the snap, not being like, well, it being a signal. And that is the muscle that you're training. Like, so when you do snap, when you sense that you're going to snap, that is your training opportunity. That is your lift, your weight bearing kind of moment of being in the gym, because you recognize that that's there. And then you choose that moment to choose your next step.
Yeah, yeah. Thanks for bringing us back. You're absolutely right. Like, what is that muscle? That muscle is self-awareness. Yeah,
And
yeah.
using the snap as that opportunity
Mhm,
to
mhm,
build that.
absolutely. Yep, 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 and that's three-step process, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, noticing, naming it, and taking the time to regulate before you respond.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's all building the muscle every time.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
And recognize that if you do snap, it's like, because a lot of people that I'm aware of, like, just sometimes they tend to say, this is just me, this is my personality, and it's not a
Mhm,
personality.
mhm, mhm.
Behavior that you get to choose to change if you want.
Exactly. Exactly. It's a choice. It's a
Yeah.
choice. Yeah. And when you say that's just me, that's a choice to not work on yourself, not go to the gym, not make a choice to show up in a healthier way, right? In a way that can change the world for the better.
Yeah. Amazing. Amazing, Rainey. That was a really brilliant conversation, and the takeaway from this is using Snap as a moment to build your self awareness muscle, and recognizing that moment of developing self awareness is a leadership choice that can have huge impact on your culture, on the people around you, on the business, the profit line, and also outside of work as well.
Agreed. Agreed. Yep. Snapping as a tool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks so much, Rasha. It's been a great conversation, as you said. Yeah. So conflict doesn't mean something's wrong. It means something matters. And when you learn to handle it well, everyone wins. Your team, your business, and your own well-being. So everyone out there, stay steady, stay human. This is where real leadership begins. See you next time, and look after yourselves and each other.